nerdy, unqualified, and indistinguishable from rambling. Welcome back to the A&D Show.
I can't believe people actually listen to this show.
Man, they are not ready for this.
My opinion's always correct, but you're allowed to be wrong.
All right. I agree. Hello, and welcome back to the A&D Show, episode 4.
We
are
record.
Just freaking cranking this crap out every single week.
Absolutely.
So, big stuff to talk about tonight. I do want to give a couple of honorable mentions in response to last week's episode. We had some really great feedback from a couple of viewers. I don't know if they're regular or consistent viewers, but we wanted to shout them out. So shout out to, I guess one of those comments got deleted.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Let's see.
Well, I was going to shout her out.
The government censoring our free speech. This is insane.
The
beginning.
Shout out to patron saint of Switchblade 2944 for chiming in on our first episode talking about all things Marvel and the growth and garbage thereof. Shout out to, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, Gutter Formula Herschel 8758 for saying things like 6 stars TV. I don't know what that means, but thanks for commenting. And then Reaper 6913 talking about Lord of the Rings from our last episode. He says that he thinks that J.R.R. Tolkien left a series of books and notes, other sort of documents explaining how his intellectual property should be used, how it's supposed to be, and that he doesn't believe we need to tell any new stories, that we should only tell the story as it was written. I'm inclined to agree with him. I think that's a great feedback. So thank you, Reaper, for chiming in. And everybody else, for leaving your comments and on the shorts, on the videos, on YouTube. We appreciate your feedback. We would like to hear from you. Couple of PSAs before we get started with this week's episode. First of all, this just in. Longtime listener Jeff, spelled E-R-I-C, would appreciate it if people who said his name would stop mispronouncing it. I know that's a bit confusing because it looks like it should be pronounced Eric, but it's actually pronounced Jeff. It's
just really, I mean, these parents now with how they spell their kids' names is getting out of hand.
I know. And, Jeff, I know you're listening, Jeff. So thank you for being a loyal listener to the show. And we're doing our part to help the plight of your unfortunately spelled name.
Yef? Is that the problem? Is it Yef?
No, it's Jeff. It's a strong J sound.
Okay.
Coming from that E.
It's good to know.
Oh, all right. Well, we are
stupid.
Oh gosh.
So
all the things, all the dumb things. We have a pretty exciting episode for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about video game movie adaptations and the supreme question of, are we in the golden age of video game movies and video game movie adaptations? That's a tricky question to answer, and I think we're going to do multi-part. We're going to talk about the best of, the worst of, a few honorable mentions, and then some that are upcoming. And then at the end, we're going to make our own definitive statement individually about whether we think we're in the golden age or whether we think that it's just never going to happen.
In prepping for this discussion, I kind of went online and I pulled up like a list of like all of the upcoming, like the whole list, and it's incredibly long.
It is long. There's a lot that's
they're
in the works.
Like, they're making like a Mega Man movie, which I don't know how you do that. I don't know. But they did Transformers and that worked out okay. And so there's
a Pac-Man movie in the works. I heard there's a Pac-Man movie in the works.
And again, it's one of those, how do you do it? I don't know. I think it'll be good. But this is something that I want to talk about because I've been a gamer my whole life. I'm almost 40. And I still play games, not as much as I used to. When you have kids, you try to squeeze in like an hour or two on the weekends, maybe 3 if you're lucky. and you work, so you don't really play during the week, and so it's one of those things where it's like you don't get to play like you used to. You know, uh, someone told me the other day that I asked about Fortnite, and they said I'd crush you in Fortnite, and I said that may be true, but 20 years ago I would have crushed you in Halo, so I don't want to hear it.
Right. Is
You
Halo
know,
still a thing? Is it still like an
I
active
think I
game
think peop- I
platform?
think people still do multiplayer on that online, but I don't know. I don't really play online because you
When
know
was the last installment, the actual game installment of that franchise?
I think it was like Halo Infinite, I think, and it was like maybe 10 years ago. I
I
don't
was
know,
gonna say
maybe
it
not that
sounds
long
like it's
ago.
been a while.
But like my thing is, it's like when you're playing games, it's like I don't have time to play online because I don't need to get beat by some 12-year-old who makes fun of me. Like,
Right, some
just give me a single
foul-mouthed
player.
kid
Yeah,
screaming
give me
profanities at you.
a command. But so when it comes to video game movies, there is a long, dark history of video game
Yeah, there
movies.
is.
They're not, they're not typically good. Case in point, one of the worst video game movies to ever happen, which should have been a hit, and that was the very first Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh my gosh, this thing is legendary, how bad it is.
It's terrible. And there, you've got revisionist history of like, well, it's so bad it's good. And David, you and I have had a lot of conversations about my love for campy movies, especially campy horror films. Love them,
Mhm.
love them. This is not so bad it's good. It's just so bad. Like there's no
Yeah,
so good on it.
no.
It's a terrible, terrible movie. The acting is subpar. You can tell the guys will be there. What is John Leguizamo doing playing Luigi? Like, what is he doing? He's better than that.
I think
Dennis
it's funny
Hopper
that
is King Koopa. I mean, it's just terrible.
it's funny that you bring up John Leguizamo because I believe he is Italian descent, if I'm not mistaken, which is the only thing that might qualify him to play that
Yeah.
role. And when they came out with the latest version of the Mario, the new like Illumination Sony Mario movie that was really good,
Which we'll
he
discuss
was
later.
like which we'll discuss a bit more, but he was like extremely vocal against it, like coming out of the woodwork with all this like this is cultural appropriation and all this other stuff because you're not hiring Italian actors to play these Italian characters.
Charlie Day as Luigi was hysterical.
So good. So
So
much
good.
better than
So good.
Johnny Leguizamo. Come
Well,
on.
you got the Mario Brothers movie that came out. You've got everything after the first Resident Evil movie, which it was all downhill. Like the first one, is on my best list, and it was I loved it. Everything after that, it was just slowly downhill. But then I think for me, the biggest injustice for me when it came to video game adaptations was probably Max Payne and Hitman. You know, two games that should have been incredibly easy to make into movies. The
Yeah.
Hitman games should have been the most simple thing to make into movies. Same thing goes for Max Payne. The storyline for the game was fantastic, and
Mhm.
you get these movies, and I said before, in fact, I said this season, I love Mark Wahlberg as an actor. I think he's a great actor, but him playing Max Payne, the movie was terrible. And then Hitman, you had two Hitman
Timothy
movies, I think just
Timothy
two.
Olyphant.
Timothy Olyphant, and then you had another guy. I can't remember. Was it? What was his name that played in the second movie? So you had two different actors playing Hitman, and Timothy Olyphant, who I love.
It was Rupert Friend.
Rupert Friend. Timothy Olyphant, who I loved in Justified. He was just not the right fit for this movie. It should have
Right.
been great. It should have been fun, but it was awful.
And it's I think it goes without saying that none of the discredit or none of the credit, I guess I should say it this way, none of the credit for how bad these movies came out, at least these two, lands on the shoulders of the cast because I mean Timothy Olyphant is a fantastic actress and Rupert Friend, for all of its pitfalls, Agent 47, Hitman Agent 47, Rupert Friend was a fantastic iteration. He did a fantastic job as that character, It was just neither film held up on the story, and neither film really captured the essence of what made those games so special.
Right. And thing is, I know that when it comes to video game movies, that there are worse ones that have come out than those that I've mentioned already.
Yeah.
I'm very well aware of Uwe Ball and the movies that he's made. He made a ton of video game movies: Far Cry, Postal, House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, Blood Rain, which turned out to be awful. He's made an absolute laundry list of video game movies,
Yeah.
and they've all been terrible. But I never watched them.
Yeah.
As somebody who really enjoyed the Far Cry games. I never watched the Far Cry movie. It looked terrible from the beginning. But
You know
these are movies that I thought should have been really good, and they
yeah.
just weren't.
With a game like Far Cry, there is so much lore built around, like, what do they have, like 7 or 8 entries in that franchise now? Oh, is
Six.
it
Well,
6?
six mainline titles. I think there's some expansions here and there. Played. I think I the first time I played Far Cry, or the last time I played Far Cry was Far Cry 5, and I thought it was one of the best games I played in a long time. I tried 6, and again, another one of those games where it's like you got to grind a lot, and I didn't have time to do it.
Yeah.
Far Cry 5 was fairly fast paced. Some grinding here and there, but for the most part, it was fairly fast paced. But I just don't have time for a lot of like the grinding games. Like we talked about that before about with Starfield, stuff like that. That's a huge AAA title that everyone's raving about how good it is, and I'm sure it's great. But I don't have time
Yeah.
for that. Give me a game that I can pick up, play for a couple hours, and walk away.
Right.
But it's one of the things where it's like there's just there like you said, there's a lot of lore built around these games that should lend itself to be a great situation, and it just gets dropped every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about these worst of, there are 3 that come to mind for me that stand out pretty starkly against their counterparts when it comes to the actual video game version versus the actual film version. Now, a couple of these I haven't played just because they're not my style of gameplay, but one of them I have, and it was just sad. The first one, I haven't played the game for the first 2. For the first one, is Monster Hunter. Had Mila Jovovich, came out a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. It looked like it was gonna be really exciting, visually stunning, a stacked cast, great VFX, but the storyline, I've heard of the game, and I've heard that the game is like, you know,
It's
um,
fun.
I've
It's a
heard
fun
that it's
game.
just really
Yeah.
exciting, and I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe the game just didn't have that deep of a story. I don't know, but it was just so incredibly forgettable, and we talked about this a couple of episodes for the past couple of episodes, that, when you watch a movie that's supposed to be gritty and exciting and intense, you have to really work hard as a filmmaker to make those stakes feel like they've got weight behind them. And this film just didn't work. The second one, and I think you're going to mention some of this in your list, but this is a very specific call out. The second one is the Resident Evil show. Now,
Mhm.
I know you mentioned that Resident Evil, the first movie, was good, and every movie after that was a hot mess, and I agree with that. But I don't think any of the movies, good or bad, have any impact or can be any worse than this TV show is. Did you watch it? Did you watch any of it?
I think the first 2 episodes,
Yeah.
and then that was out.
Yeah, I couldn't make it past episode 3.
When
It
when did
just
that come out?
it was, I wanna say 2020. Oh, it's not been that
It
long.
wasn't that long ago.
No, it's a fairly recent outing. And, there were like in the first, maybe I got to episode 5, I don't remember, but I got in far enough that I caught some of the action, which that's one of the things I loved about the first one. The first one was just shrouded in mystery. The first movie, shrouded
Mhm.
in mystery and intrigue and excitement, and it really capitalized on the unnerving intensity of that game and the
Mhm.
story behind it. But this show, God, it just bores you to death for the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then finally when something happens, you're just like, "Okay, finally." It goes back to being boring and slow for
Yeah,
the
you're
rest.
kinda praying for a zombie bite at that point.
Exactly, and it doesn't capitalize on any of the things that we love about the games or the
Mhm.
original first film, because it was a zombie hunting killer game, right? It
Right.
wasn't. We don't really. I mean, there's intrigue and mystery about the lore and about how things began, but we don't really need another
But
like
but this
intro to the
right,
whole
but this
zombie
goes
apocalypse.
and I'm gonna talk about this more whenever we talk about some of our best movies, but you've already got the storyline. Like it's already
Right.
been made for you. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like if you could just give me a movie adaptation of Resident Evil 2 or
Yeah.
or Resident Evil 1. Like Welcome to Raccoon City had some callbacks to Resident Evil 1, but and I'm not saying it needs to be like shot for shot, but like
Yeah.
you've already got the story written. Like why what are we doing trying to like reinvent the wheel here? Like
Right.
these most of these games have better stories than a lot of movies that have come out, so it's like what are we doing?
Right. And along that same lines, and on the inverse, I guess you could say, is my third pick for worst video game movies of all time, and that's Assassin's Creed.
Oh,
And here's the thing. I love me some Michael Fassbender. I think he's a fantastic actor. I think that he really does look the part, and his physical presence as the main character in that movie, where it worked really well. The visuals were great. The supporting cast was fantastic. Um, and this was one where it could have been lent well by a, maybe, I guess, straying a little bit further from the source material.
right.
Just because if you've ever played the original Assassin's Creed game, you know that it is incredibly slow
Yeah.
and very boring. And it's like you really only get the overarching storyline in little bits and pieces as you are outside the Animus in the real world. That's where you get the primary pieces of the story that's happening, of why this technology exists and why it is that you're being put into this machine. And all the whys happen when you're outside the Animus, which is maybe 5% of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's spread out over the entire length of the storyline. And you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. Running around in like the ancient Near East and slaying people with a secret wrist blade and all that kind of stuff. The espionage and intrigue, it's fun, but it's a bit slow, a bit too slow.
Right.
And no matter what, they really could have benefited from focusing more on the outside of the Animus bit and how that all kind of just focusing a little bit more on the storyline, the overarching story. I don't know. It just didn't work. It didn't work for me.
No,
I
it
don't
didn't.
know. I can't really put a finger on what it was that made it fail, because for all intents and purposes on paper it shouldn't have, because
Right. I
it was
agree.
a fantastically casted movie, fantastically written and directed, but it just didn't hold up.
So we've kind of laid our qualms with our worst list.
Yeah.
What makes your best list, and why is it on your best list?
Good question. And I think I'm probably going to step on a few toes here, because I think some of the ones, granted, I only put 3 in here. I limited myself. I feel like I do too much sometimes. But I do have a few honorable mentions I'll talk about. But my top 3, and not in any particular order, are the Alicia Vikander helmed Tomb Raider. I really enjoyed when, was it Sony that owns that IP? I don't know who it is. When they rebooted the game,
Maybe.
when they rebooted the game franchise back in 2008 or 2015 or whatever that window of time was that they rebooted the game franchise, and they went to a more gritty, realistic, um, less overtly sexualized version of Lara Croft, and it was more about what is it? Oh my gosh, the word. Oh, or archaeology, that's the one. It was more about the archaeology and the lore and the character building. When they went that direction and it became more of a first person survival shooter versus just
Right.
a running around with huge kajungas shooting guns from your hips and all that kind of stuff.
Fighters
When when they evolved it into that, and it was a lot more of a hefty story, I loved it. And when they took that iteration and they adapted that to film. Alicia Vikander, say what you want about her. I think she's a great actress. She's been in some really great top tier movies. She's not what you would call an everyman type actor.
Right.
I wouldn't say that she's the kind of actress that you can put in any film and it's going to be a smashing success. But in this particular role, I don't think they could have selected anybody better than her for the role. Her
I
physicality
agree.
there, she had the right look. It worked on every level, and it was like Dora the Explorer, except for like on crack for adults. It was great. That's my number one. And again, not in any particular order. I just really, really liked that one. I've tried to rewatch it a few times, and I just can never find it anywhere streaming, and I never have the money to buy it.
Have you heard of the internet?
I do have the internet, and I probably will. I do want to say, Alicia, I know you're watching this podcast, listening to this podcast. You're a huge fan of the A&D Show. So thank you for your hard work there. I think that was originally supposed to have spun off into a series of films that didn't ever get off the ground because it was a commercial failure, but I thought it was a fantastic film. So thank you for
I will echo that the second iteration was better than the Angelina Jolie Lara Croft. 100%.
Yeah. And there are things about the Angelina Jolie Lara Croft that are redeemable. Like, I like Angelina Jolie. I thought she did a fair job. There were some supporting characters that were really fun. I loved getting to see Daniel Craig in one of his earlier performances. I think Gerard Butler was in one of them in an earlier performance as well.
I always forget these things. Like, yeah.
And so it's cool to kind of go back and to see these kind of tentpole, no pun intended, I guess, these tentpole movies of the time that haven't held up well, and that kind of we kind of see the dawning of some of these larger, bigger named actors. So it's got some redeemable qualities, but Alicia Vikander's version is just far and wide so much better. I think my second best, again, not in any particular order, this is just the one I have listed second on my list here, is the latest Mortal Kombat movie. I think we've mentioned this in other episodes.
I think twice now, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's just because it's that good. Now, does that mean I don't like the original adaptations?
So
No. The first one that is just the 1990s in all its glory. It
soundtrack and all.
Yes. And my favorite part, I don't think we ever mentioned this before, but my favorite part about the first two installments, the original two Mortal Kombat films, my favorite part is that they completely changed the cast between films, but they used the clip from the end of the first film as the opening for the second film.
Hysterical.
And then they just switched casts, like literally mid-film.
Like nobody would notice.
Yeah, it was hilarious. But they were classic. They were classic. But I will say, it was like it took 20 years or however long it was between both the original and this newest one. It took that long for VFX and film production to catch up to what it needed to be for the movie to be what it's supposed to be, the bloody, violent, gory mess that it's supposed to be. And I really think they capitalized on that, and I think they did a fantastic job. The casting was phenomenal, and from what I hear, it was commercially successful enough to garner a sequel, and that sequel is supposed to be coming out either this year or sometime early next year. And I'm really excited about it because Johnny Cage was always one of my favorite characters, and they teased him at the end of the movie last. And I don't know who is slated to play that role, but I'm really excited to see that character on screen again, and for him to be done justice, because he was a pretty cool character in the original from the 90s. And then the very beginning, they switched casts, and then he goes up and does his little kick thing, and then they break his neck and he dies, like in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Like it was
brutal. It was a brutal way to go out.
It was brutal, and it was just such a disservice to the character, but still a fair movie. We got Jax in the second movie of the original, and it was good. He was awesome. But gosh, the CG back then was so bad.
So bad, but it was bad in a good way.
When Liu Kang and the other villain guy, they turn into their like monster versions of themselves, Oof, I can't even tell you how many
I think what
VFX reactions I've seen of people like reacting to that animation.
I think what
So
blows
bad.
my mind is like you had like Spielberg doing T2,
Yeah,
and it was just so stellar. Sorry,
it's okay. Yeah,
I've got a
there's
raging a wild animal behind the curtain. Um, you had T2 that came out years before that, and visually it was so stunning. And then this
yeah,
comes out, I think, like 3 or 4 years after that, and it looked so atrocious.
so bad, so bad. It was really fun, but gosh, it was just so bad.
See, now
And
that
then
song's stuck in my head.
Mortal Kombat.
Oh
It's
my
a good thing we
gosh!
can't. It's a good thing we can't sing it very well because we probably would get some copyright strike on us
Yeah,
or
we got a
something.
strike on it.
My third top is a fairly recent, and I tried. You sent me your list, listeners, viewers. We do talk about these episodes before we record them, so that we don't step all over each other's content whenever we're trying to share our opinions. So I read your list and I strategically chose things that were not on your list. So that's why I'm not mentioning some of the very obvious choices for
Right,
video game
and I
movies.
am
You already selected them. Yeah, yeah, you did the work ahead of time.
that a
But
boy.
one of my third on this, and then I'll go into my honorable mentions of these best, is going to be the Sonic the Hedgehog series.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that there are people out there that are not a fan of the IP, and that's fine. And one of the things about the games is that they don't really have much, at least to my memory, and I could be wrong about this. Feel free to correct me in the comments below. But to my memory, they don't exactly have loads of story built into them. You're just this blue little weird looking thing rolling around collecting coins. Like there's a little bit of story, you got a villain, very, very like thin narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that with the latest versions, the latest three movies, well, is the third one out yet? The third one's not out yet.
No, not yet. No,
With the two
they're
movies,
they're doing they're doing like a Knuckles show
yeah,
before the
a
third one
limited
comes out.
series about Knuckles. So there's two feature films. There is a short run show that's coming here in another few months, and then there's a third movie that's supposed to come later this year or early next year. Jim Carrey coming out of retirement to play this role. Dr. Robotnik, I
He
think,
was
is
so good as Robotnik. So
fantastic.
good.
And I can't remember the name of the guy that does the voice for Sonic, but I remember him from Parks and Rec because I want to say that I can't remember the name of the character from Parks and Rec he did either, but he was a opposite Aziz Ansari's character.
Oh,
And
is it John Ralphio?
John Ralphio, that's
Yeah.
right. It's the same actor, I think.
What is it? Yeah,
Same
I think it.
actor.
What is his name though? That's bugging me. I'll figure it out later.
Here, I'll look it up real quick. But yeah, those movies, they're just so much fun. And they're clean, and his name is Ben Schwartz.
Ben Schwartz. Yeah.
Hilarious. Love those movies. James Marsden, Idris Elba as Knuckles. I mean, come on. So their stacked cast, the animation is great. And now I will say this is one of the funniest when they originally released the trailer. If you remember this,
People
what
lost their minds.
what about 4.5 years ago? They originally released the trailer, and the CG character model that they used for Sonic was nightmare fuel. It was just bad.
Atrocious.
Yeah. And this is one of the few instances when a film studio actually listened to their audience, because they took that feedback and they're like, holy crap, we're getting torn apart about this character development or this character model. We need to rethink this, or this film is going to fail.
Yep.
And they pulled the project, they delayed it by, I don't know, 2 months or 3 months or something. And then whenever they re-released the trailer, everybody was praising them. I don't remember even what studio. Was it Warner? I don't even remember.
Probably.
Paramount. It's Paramount. When they re-released the trailer, everybody's praising them for actually listening to the audience. And ever since, it's been a fan favorite, and it's just a lot of fun. So now my honorable mentions, and then I'll kick it over to you for your top. I've got 4 honorable mentions that I want to throw out there. The first one is not the only, but the only full feature length film adaptation of my favorite game franchise, and that's Uncharted.
Mm-hmm.
The Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg helmed Uncharted movie. Could it have been better? Yes.
Yeah.
But was it a miserable failure? Absolutely not. Did it do justice to the franchise? Yes, I thought it
Yeah, I
did.
think so.
I thought it was fun. It was exciting. It played in just enough to the games, but it took enough creative liberty that it didn't feel like they were just because it's the same. The Uncharted games are very much the same as like you were talking about um,
Far Cry.
Far Cry,
Mhm.
where the game has the whole story already built out. Like you could make a shot for shot remake of the entire game and make a great movie. You wouldn't need to reinvent the wheel to make a good movie from this. But they didn't want to do that. So they borrowed just enough from the game that it worked. And they created a newish, more of an origin story around Nathan Drake. And
Mhm.
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great. So that's my first honorable mention. My second is the Warcraft movie. Now, this is going to be pretty divisive because I know that there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way about the Warcraft movie as they do about M. Night Shyamalan's Airbender movie, um, which we won't go into tonight because that's a totally different discussion. But the Warcraft movie, I thought was really quite good considering the very limited story that they had to build from, and the visuals were breathtaking. Was it a little bit formulaic? Yes. Did it shock you with any of its storytelling? No. But was it a fun, exciting romp in the hay? Absolutely. I thought it was a great time. Um, Third on my honorable mentions is Doom with Dwayne Johnson and Carl Urban. I just freaking love that movie. It's dark, it's gritty. They took a they I appreciated it, but it was still very campy at the very end when they go first person shooter mode with Carl Urban's character and he's going through shooting people, shooting the monsters or whatever. It was a bit ridiculous, but man, it was just fun. It was such a fun movie.
Yeah, that's funny because one of my honorable mentions was Doom, but only
Oh, really?
because of that first person shooter scene. I thought
Yeah.
I thought that was incredible. I mean,
I
I
just
thought the movie overall was drab, but that first person shooter scene was just so much fun and so cool that I'm like, this is amazing.
it was just I thought the whole thing from top to bottom was fun. But me personally, movies that I really enjoy when it comes to the more intense content
Mhm.
are things like being locked in an underground bunker and trying to fight your way out, being locked in an underwater research lab and having to deal with the pressures of the water and whatever monsters are down there. Like I enjoy that type of thrill, and so it was a really it's I actually have it in my movie library and I've seen it quite a few times, at least a dozen times. And then my last honorable mention, and this one is very recent, but I thought was my wife and I both watched it. We both quite enjoyed it. Neither of us have played the game that it's based on or the game series it's based on because we just don't enjoy that kind of game. But Five Nights at Freddy's, the film adaptation, was shockingly pretty good. It wasn't super gory. It actually had a PG-13 rating. It wasn't super evil and frightening or whatever. It was pretty dark content matter, but ultimately, when it comes to a kind of goofy video game based film, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So those are my audible mentions. And there's so many more out there that I think are worth mentioning, but for sake of
Yeah.
time, I won't.
Yeah, and I think for me, type of the obvious ones that I've got. The Mario movie obviously was phenomenal. The new one,
Yes.
uh, that was such a good movie. I mean, start to finish it. I mean, there were so many call outs to like my childhood.
Yeah.
The way I felt playing those games, and it was an absolute blast. The cast was Chris Pratt as Mario, Charlie
Mhm.
Day as Luigi. Um, it was just great. Anna Taylor Joy as Princess Peach was phenomenal. The movie, all in all, was just. I mean, it was just from start to finish. It was fun, and I don't think and people didn't know. People had no clue to expect. People hated on Chris Pratt for being Mario in the trailer, and
I
the movie
know.
turned out to be a lot of fun. It was a great movie. We still sing Peaches at our house. I think it's a fun song. The girls love the video. It's just
Jack
done.
Black Jack Black with his musical creds as Bowser, that was easily the most viral and hilarious song from
And
any
it's
movie
yeah,
I
and
think I've ever.
I'm someone who generally is not, excuse me, is not the biggest Jack Black fan. I think he's
Yeah,
fine. I find him to be a little bit of Jack Black's all I need, and I thought he was absolutely great in this movie.
I
Um,
enjoyed it a
Detective
lot.
Pikachu,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
love Detective
It
Pikachu.
was, Ryan Reynolds as the
Was
voice of Pikachu.
Pikachu?
If you haven't seen this movie,
It's a blast.
it is so much fun, very, very heartfelt in the
It's so
end.
good.
Such an incredible father-son
Yeah.
story. It was really good. Really, really good. I enjoyed that one a lot.
And then my third best is the very first Resident Evil movie.
Yeah.
You got Mila Jovovich waking up in this house, and they're like the caretakers for the Umbrella Corporation. They're the kind of the protectors over it or whatever. And there's this outbreak, and they have to go underground. I mean, it was so good. And you had the what was the name of that projection? I can't remember what that was called.
I
Um,
don't remember.
but it was just so good. It
Yeah.
was suspenseful and this weird mixture of action and horror and I mean start to finish it was just such a good movie.
Yeah.
Um, I watched that movie probably like I kid you not probably 30 times growing up. Like that's such a great movie. Like that
Yeah.
was because that was the first big video game adaptation when I was a teenager that had come out in a very very long time.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just fantastic. Again,
I
I said
will I will never forget. I have never been able to forget, and I never will forget the scene with the laser grid
yeah,
going through the guy and he just falling into a pile of
yeah,
fleshy chunks. Like, oof. That
so
was
so
that was
good.
that was a visceral moment in that movie.
But this brings us kind of full circle to this question of are we in the golden age of video game adaptations? You've
Right.
got very big hits like Mario, Sonic, The Witcher, that have come out recently that are very, very big hits. They announced that they've begun the development process for a Legend of Zelda movie, which, as a massive Legend of Zelda fan, I
Mhm.
can't wait. You had the trailer released for the Borderlands movie. Now
That
I've not played the Borderlands movies, but it looks like a lot of fun.
it looks
Um,
really good.
yeah, you had the Fallout series on Prime. The trailer release for that looks fantastic. But you've got this massive list of movies that are in development. You've got BioShock, which if you've not played BioShock, you need to at least the first one. The
Yeah.
first BioShock game is the best one, and it's got to this day one of the best twists in a game I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's an absolute blast. Death Stranding, one of the biggest games of the last few years, done by Kojima Productions. They're doing a Mega Man game, Metal Gear Solid. These games that were all staples of my childhood. Metal Gear Solid. I remember when that came out on PS1 when I was a kid, how much fun that was. Um, and so it makes me excited for where it's going. I think that I think video game movies there's such a breadth of story and potential there, and you've just never had. I don't know if it's a budgetary thing or the right people doing it, the right writers, the right directors doing them. But I mean, from what I can tell, especially with the Fallout preview that I saw, the trailer, it looks like they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
They're taking the time to make sure this is done right with the casting, with the writing, with the directing. The Fallout trailer, if you've not seen it, it looks absolutely fantastic, and it looks like one that if you're not a fan of video games, you might very well enjoy this notion of a show.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a few there so one of the things I think culturally that we are shifting towards when it comes to film adaptations, be that adaptations of video games, books, whatever. One of the things I think that culturally we're shifting to artistically is shifting away from a condensed adaptation format, taking a fully realized, deep, vivid story and condensing it into a sub 120-minute runtime, and in the process you lose valuable characters, you lose loads and loads and loads of character development, then you end up with these beautifully crafted characters that come across so two-dimensional and flat and boring.
Right.
And at that point you're just relying on the wrong things to get your story and your movie to be effective and profitable. The wrong things, in my personal opinion, are relying on the prowess of your actors, the name, and whether they're popular and whether they'll sell tickets. And then at that point you're casting somebody into a role not because they're the right person for the role, but because you think that their face on your marketing material is going to get you more money. And other things that you're going to lean into are things like visual effects, and whether your effects houses are going to be cranking out VFX that are going to be beautiful enough or eye-catching enough. And those are the wrong things to lean on for effective and quality storytelling. And that's one of the things that makes books, and I know that we're not talking about book adaptations, but that's one of the things that makes books so much superior to their film adaptation counterparts, is that the authors craft this image with their words, and they don't waste time with trying to build an image based on a person that they think you want to look at, and they're not building a set based on what you think is going to look cool. They're telling you a story and they're building a visual in your mind, and they're forcing you as the reader to see what they want you to see. And so these adaptations heretofore in the bygone era, as I'm going to call it, have suffered because they felt the need to condense these beautiful, deep, three-dimensional stories into these very condensed time frames. But I think that culturally and artistically, we are shifting into a period of time, and I would call it a golden age, where people are developers and content creators or whatever in the film industry are seeing the opportunity to create more content around a single narrative structure that allows them to be more fleshed out with their character development and rely less on the prowess and popularity of their actors or actresses, and rely more on the quality of the storytelling. A good case in point of this is the Reacher series we talked about last week. Granted, based on a book. Same with the Jack Ryan series. They're not stacking the cast with a Tom Cruise level actor to carry that role, but they're casting specifically for that character, and then they're relying on the quality of the storytelling. And so I think that is what is, I think, kicking us into this high gear, going into this golden age of video game film adaptations, because that's one of the things I think with Borderlands is going to be a series. I could be wrong about that. I might be a film, but I know
it's a movie. It's a movie, but they're planning on multiple movies.
Okay, but I know like the Fallout is a series for sure, and there's several others like that. They're building out a series with Sonic. We've already talked about that, and I think because of that, they're able to build these characters to be more, more dynamic and have more dimension to them. And that's going to make us as the audience engage more and be more faithful.
It's exactly right, because I think about I mentioned Justified as a show earlier. Those were based off books by Elmore Leonard. The books, the audio books. I'm not a reader, but I like audio books, and I'm listening to one right now. It's
Same.
6.5 hours long. So the notion of being able to squeeze 6.5 hours of a book into a 2-hour movie is next to impossible. So you make this a show, a series where you've got 10 episodes per season, and you can do the story justice. But here's what I think is that I think these studios are seeing that there is money to be made here if you do it the right way. Tears of the Kingdom. I remember when that game released, I was a child again because I went to the midnight release. In the first 3 days, that game sold 10 million copies. By December 2023, it had sold just over 20 million copies. Okay. At $60 a pop, that is what, 1.2 billion, right?
I trust your math on that one.
1.2 billion it made in 3 months. So it's getting to be obvious that there is money to be made here if you do it the right way, and that's
Yeah.
that's not even Christmas. That's just the first couple months, and
Right.
so that was before Christmas time, etc. And so when you look at this, okay, people are willing to spend the money if the product is good.
Mhm.
You know, I'm convinced that if you made a new BioShock game today, if you made a new BioShock game today, if you made a new Borderlands game today, a brand new one, I know that that there was a spinoff that came out like a year or two ago that I think did okay, but not great. That was true to the source material, that it would do well.
Yeah.
There is and honestly, I think the gaming part of it also is that gaming is becoming more mainstream. It
Mhm.
used to be very, very sort of niche, very sort of the nerds did it, not everybody. It was just kind of the nerds, and that was one of those nerds, and that was fine. But now people that it seems like everyone plays something now,
Yeah.
and so I think that I think that is just kind of a testament to where that is today, and it's becoming so popular that I think that, again, if you do this the right way, my biggest fear is that the Legend of Zelda movie is an absolute bomb. I want that to be solid.
Is your cat attacking your computer?
She's behind the curtain. It's an absolute zoo here. I'm sorry. It's not great.
I'm locked away in my. Meanwhile, I'm locked away in my quiet office while
Yeah,
my wife and our dogs are asleep.
I've already heard one child up this evening, so
Gosh.
yeah, it's the little one who. So I was gone for a couple days this week for a conference, and I had my 3-year-old was not very happy that I was gone for 48 hours. And so I got home today after work, and she goes, "Oh, you're are you staying home?" I said, "Yeah, I'm home. I slept here last night. I'll sleep here again tonight. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere." But, but like so, for me, it's like I think that there's an absolute treasure trove of property here that you could that you could adapt into a good movie. And let's be real. I mean, there's maybe 3 or 4 good movies that come out a year.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else is garbage. So why not try something new? Why not go to this well of storytelling that you've got?
Yeah.
I named, I think, 6 or 7 movies that are coming out, and there's probably 20 or 30 more that are coming out that that are in development.
Some of the ones, just to call out a couple more, some of the ones that are in that treasure trove that you're talking about, films that are in, from what I understand, in development. There's a developmental piece about Just Cause, one of my other favorite game franchises. There's another, I believe I didn't misread that there is a Metal Gear Solid
Yep.
film in development, which I'm excited about.
Which that for me, that was the game that I remember, and I'm gonna date myself here, is that you used to rent video games in video store, and you would get
Same.
3 days. 3 days. Rent on Friday, had to go back on Monday. And I remember my mom rented Metal Gear Solid, and she was like, "This says mature. Is that okay?" I said, "Yeah, it's fine, Mom. Don't worry. No big deal." I was 13, and I'm like, "This is fine." My first mature game that I ever played. And I remember sitting there playing Metal Gear Solid, and how much fun that game was. That the first game, like I think the first mainstream game where you had a lot of the espionage, a lot of like the sneaking around. Because everything else really before that was just kind of run and gun.
Yep.
And it's a fun story, and I know that it kind of jumped the shark a little bit late in the series with the senator that was like a bodybuilder or whatever. He was the bad guy. I get it. And you may not, our listeners may not know that reference, but it got a little bit wacky towards the end.
Didn't one of the protagonists end up being like a vampire or something?
Yeah, it's not. Then not everything's a winner. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's so much potential there for it, and I'm excited about that. That's probably one of the ones that, and I didn't even realize that was a thing until I think yesterday when I saw that on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's incredible.
Yeah. I remember my brother and I, similar situation. It was movie rental the movie rental era, the golden era of movie stores.
Bring it back. Like seriously,
Oh, I
like
miss
people don't understand the joy of getting a pizza from like Domino's or whatever, and getting a movie or two, and getting a video game, and just that was your weekend. Get a 2
and
liter of like
knowing
Mountain Dew, and you're rocking, man. It was
right,
great.
and knowing that you have a limited window of
Yeah.
time that you have to watch all 5 movies and play both video games in, and so you're, like, cranking movie after movie for, like, 2 nights in a row.
You know, I always wanted to be the upper class family that had the automatic VHS rewinder, like on top of the
Oh,
TV.
yes.
Like that was like way upper class. Like it's like my dad's
We
like, we're not spending $30 on a rewinder. And I said, Dad, it's
we had
incredible.
so at one point, we had one, it wasn't automatic, but it was you pop the cassette out, and then you put it in, it looked like a little black, like, sports
Yeah.
car, and you slide it in there, and you pop it down, and it'll rewind for you. That was late in the game, but, and then right after that, of course, it died. It didn't survive very long because it was a piece of cheap garbage, uh,
Can you
but
Photoshop it? I'm sorry. Can you Photoshop for me? Just figure
no,
it
it's
out.
okay. It's all just put your arm up there like
I'm
that. It's good.
listen, I'm an animal house. Okay, just get used to it. I've got
Okay,
2 cats and a dog. Okay.
because now I can put the hashtag cat into our video, which should just shoot our viewership just to the
You better,
roof.
yeah. If you do that, actually, that's kind of smart.
Yeah, and it's not a lie because there's a cat in the video, and she's adorable. So,
It's
anyway, but
Pepper.
yeah, I remember we rented, Metal Gear Solid 2 for PS2, and I remember that game being so much higher graphic fidelity, like, so much better at graphics than it actually was. But I remember we rented that game, and my brother, if he's listening, shout out to my brother, TJ, because he'll remember this. This is a very fond memory that I have with him, where we rented this movie, and this is when the window of time, it was late in the game for video rental stores. So they had upped the ante from 3-day rentals to 5-day rentals.
Fantastic. It's like $7. It was worth every penny.
Yes. And so we rented this game, and we stayed up all freaking night long playing this game. We beat it in the first night. we we played it, and the way that it's a one player game,
Mhm.
and so the way that we would play, and this is how we always did, so that we could share and collaborate or whatever, is that we would play, and whenever we died and had to restart, we would hand it off to the other.
Whoever. Mhm.
And that was the unspoken rule, and so
Yeah.
we would do that, and we played, I kid you not, it must have been a Friday night. We must have rented it on a Friday, and we didn't have to take it back again until, like, Wednesday or something, so we were gonna take it back on our way to church or something like that. But we played that game, it literally probably 12 hours.
Yeah.
We beat the game overnight, and it was, like, 5 o'clock in the morning, and the game was over, and I was like, "Are we done?" And my brother's like, "Yeah, I guess we did it. We did it, bro." And then we both passed out and slept the whole next day. And I dreamed every single moment of that game. I dreamed it.
It's just but that's just those are core memories that we don't
Yeah,
have. That
because we don't have Blockbusters anymore.
oh man, that was the life. Like that was the absolute life.
Oh man, just all the interactions that you would find in the movie store. I mean, because you
Yeah.
could get popcorn and snacks like you went to the movies,
Yeah.
but instead of going into a theater, you would take the movie
And you
back
would and
to your
you pace the aisles. I know our video stores they had like the newly returned movies up front. You could like kind of like leap through like, oh, they've got Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Perfect.
yeah. They've got
You're all
Speed 2
excited
with
about
Sandra Bullock and that other guy.
we had one store that in town that you could call and like reserve movies. Like I'd call like 10. They open at 10. I'd call 10 in the morning. Like, hey, can you hold this for me? And I'll be in after school to pick it up or whatever. And
Yeah.
I do miss the simplicity of renting, and also like the Netflix DVD program was fantastic.
Right.
You'd get 2 discs. I'd get like
Mhm.
20, in disc 1 and disc 2 of 24 season 2 or whatever. Send the first one back, get the second one on the way. It was incredible. It's absolutely
See,
incredible.
we were early adopters of the Netflix DVD
Mhm.
program,
Mhm.
and so we ended up getting, I think it was only like $10, $5 a
Yeah.
month, ridiculously cheap, but
Yeah.
we got 5 discs, however,
At a time.
at a time,
Oh, nice.
and so we could get an entire season of, like, Next Generation in one fell swoop, and I can even tell you how many times we did that. I would stack our rental queue with Next Generation DVDs, and then we would get them, and then I would play them, and I had like, you remember the old portable DVD players that had the flip up laptop style screen? I would have one of those, and I would sit it by my bedside. Oh gosh, I can't tell you how much I miss DVD menus.
Oh, you go to sleep and it's like playing in the background.
Yes, especially with Next Generation, because it's just the little rumble and bleeps and bloops of the ship systems and stuff. Oh my gosh,
I had that with the I think it was like the first like Star Trek movie with Chris Pine. I did that a lot. It was great, and then Blu-ray came, and it was like, and now now everything digital. I don't know, the last time I rented a movie, I think I got one like in the red box for like a trip we were going on like with the girls, and we had like a DVD player in the car.
Yeah,
but it's like I think it's the only time now you rent movies is if you have a DVD player in a vehicle. I don't have a DVD. I don't have a DVD player in my house.
Yeah,
my Xbox doesn't even do disc. It's only digital now. So
yeah, same. Yeah, I miss those days. But here, I think we're right at time for tonight's content. But before we go, I want us each to say definitively, yes or no, are we in the golden age of video game movie adaptations? For me, it's a yes.
Yeah, I lean yes. I need to see some more solid content because it's happened before where there's been one or two bangers in a row and then there's 6 piles of crap. Garbage. Shoot, I did it again. 6 piles of garbage. So I want to see, can you continue this trend of moving upward? From what I've seen from Borderlands, from the BioShock trailers, we very well could be. If those come out, the Halo series is decent. I've not watched it all, but I've heard it's fairly decent. I know that there's a lot of issues with Master Chief not being in his helmet ever, but
yeah,
you can't. You knew with like the Mandalorian that Pedro Pascal wasn't going to wear that helmet the entire show. Like that's just not realistic.
Right.
So, I get it, but I would say yes. I think we are. I think we're right there on that golden era, and I hope that for the sake of my childhood and those memories that it does continue. I look forward to the next Mario movie. If they truly do a Mega Man movie, I think that'd be great. I would love for them to try and redo Final Fantasy Advent Children, which I think was a great anime that just failed.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's my 2 cents.
Well, I guess only time will tell as to whether or not the golden age is here to stay. I think we like to believe that it's here, and I'm okay with claiming it. But I guess only time will tell whether or not it's going to be here to stay. So thank you, viewers, for watching. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know in the comments what you think of what we've done here. If you agree that we're in the golden age, let us know. And otherwise, we will catch you on the next episode. I'm pumped about next week. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm pumped about next episode. So
I just want to say, as we close, as a parent, my gaming has become very limited, but we're excited because we're playing the new Bluey game this weekend, so we're very excited about that. So
I guess we're just waiting for the next big budget Bluey film adaptation.
Bluey's solid. I also downloaded Dead Island, but that's more for when the girls are asleep, not for
right. So like now. All right, everybody. Thank you for jumping in with us and listening to the content for this week. We are excited to be here, talking with each of you, and we're pumped about upcoming. Stick with us. We'll catch you.
Catch you soon.
See ya.